All right, everybody, this is the video. The video you're going to want to show people when they come in and try to say that the Snyderverse was trash and that people lost interest in the Snyderverse. Now, first of all, the only reason it's called the Snyderverse is because it was the characters that Snyder started with Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and leading into Justice League, because he introduced all those characters in Batman vs. Superman with a small cameo. And people like to say that Snyder was a failure, his vision ruined these films, and they did not. And I'm going to explain this very clearly. And if you can't get this through your head, there is something wrong with you, okay? It's just plain and simple facts that I'm going to lay down in this video. First of all, it's not the Snyderverse. The only reason it's made that is because he created the characters. So many people come in and say Snyder this, Snyder that, Snyder this, Snyder that. It has nothing to do with Snyder. Because you know what? He directed Man of Steel. Then we had Suicide Squad, which made quite a bit of money. Then you had Batman vs. Superman, which almost made, almost over $800 million. Now, people will tell you that movie should have made $1 billion. And yeah, I would agree with that, but it doesn't make it a failure. That movie was still a profit. The only reason it didn't make over $1 billion was because the studio butchered the film. The general audiences never saw the full version of the film, and that was because the studio butchered it right before the release. Okay? That is the studio's fault. And then you find out that they had butchered Suicide Squad as well. That could have done a lot better and would have trailed right into Batman vs. Superman. But no, the studio started messing things up. Okay, it's a fact. You can't get around that. But people still came back because after that, you had Wonder Woman, or you had Wonder Woman, which did phenomenally well. And then you had Aquaman, which made over $1 billion. People were excited. People were going to the movies. You'll have people say, but they weren't making enough money. The only reason they weren't making enough money is because, number one, the studios butchered the films. They could have had more people going in, but they chose to butcher them. And the budgets were too high. If you can rein in those budgets, you can make more profit. It wasn't the idea. It wasn't the films that came out that were the problem. It is a fact. You cannot dispute this, that more people were going to the theater for all of those films until we had stuff like Birds of Prey and Shazam get released. And at that point, those were films that were not part of that original slate that Warner Brothers had released at the Comic-Con, and they started changing everything. Hamada came in and started changing everything. It was back then when the Flash movie was supposed to come out, but it kept getting rewrite after rewrite. They lost numerous directors because Hamada had a plan where he wanted to replace the Trinity with all females. He wanted to go with Supergirl, he wanted to go with Batgirl, and with Wonder Woman, and wanted to get rid of the big dogs, the male leads. And that's when they canceled the Batman film and decided to give the Batman to Matt Reeves. And it wasn't that Ben Affleck couldn't crack it. It was the fact that the studio didn't want him back to play Batman, and they wanted to go in a completely different direction. Matt Reeves didn't want to use his script. And so the studio was the one that kept interfering with everything. I guarantee you, if they would have released that standalone Batman film that Ben Affleck had written, and some people said it was the best Batman script they've ever read, had they gone through with Cyborg, with the Flash the way it was originally supposed to be, with the real Flashpoint storyline, had they done the original plan and done the slate that they had talked about, we wouldn't be here where we are today. But they chose to butcher Justice League and give an inferior product in theaters because they thought it was going to resonate with audiences. It's the executives, they thought they knew what was best for the audience, when in fact, that isn't what happened. So here's what happened, with the pandemic. The pandemic hit, Wonder Woman did terrible, James Gunn's Suicide Squad did terrible, and people will say, well, it had high reviews by the people that saw it. And yeah, that might be true. Audiences and critics liked that movie. I personally did not. I thought it was garbage. It's adolescent just juvenile, disgusting humor. I didn't care for it, but some people did. But here's the problem. There were other movies that got released at the same time that did way better than the Suicide Squad did in movie theaters. It is a fact that James Gunn's Suicide Squad was a massive failure. It just was. And you can also tell by home video sales and also by streaming. Nobody cared about Suicide Squad. They didn't want to, bootleg it. They didn't want to buy the 4K or the Blu-rays or the DVDs when they came out. But they did with Wonder Woman 1984. They did more so with Wonder Woman 1984. And then you had Black Adam come out after the pandemic when everything had been corrected. And all of a sudden, wow, Black Adam made over $400 million in movie theaters. People were coming back to the theater. They announced that Henry Cavill was coming back. They had him hit the circuit. He did a video that is still shared by DC. I talked about this in my last video. People were finally excited. Oh, we're going to get Man of Steel 2. He announced things are coming. Everything was back on track. Zaslav had just taken over. We heard that he was interested in the Trinity and that he was going to move forward with the Trinity and things were going to get corrected. And we were all excited. There was finally a light at the end of the tunnel. And then Black Adam never got a release in China. It stopped its run at about $400 million, which was still better than anything since Aquaman. But everyone called it a bomb, a failure. It wasn't. People actually started to go back. They became interested again because of the announcement of Cavill and that The Rock was out there talking about how he was there to help correct this ship. And we all were excited for all of that. And then a month later, because it didn't make as much as they were expecting, and I don't know what they were expecting to make because that is a less known character than even Shazam is. And if Shazam didn't make all that much money, and it made more than Shazam did. I mean, Black Adam was not the massive failure that everybody said it was. And in fact, Black Adam got a ton of bootleg downloads. It sold really well on home video, and people ended up really liking that movie. If you go look at the audience, they really liked it. Things were back on track. That's what the audience wanted. And then all of a sudden you announce that you have James Gunn come out, announce that he's making this reboot and that Henry Cavill was no longer going to be Superman. Henry Cavill had to come out and make a statement that, he's no longer going to be Superman moving forward and that, the studio decided to go in a different direction. And so that's what ended up happening. And so the movie that came out after that announcement was Shazam 2, and that movie tanked. I think it did even worse than the Suicide Squad did. And then you had The Flash come out. Now, the Flash movie has numerous things that were causing it to have issues. One of those is the star himself. The star himself was not allowed to go out on the circuit, had lots of legal troubles. And again, I'm not going to talk about those legal troubles. That's not my job. You guys can go do the research on that. You can do the research on Gunn. You can come to your own conclusions. I'm not here to judge people and their personal lives. I'm here to judge movies and the decisions that the studios are making. That's my job with this channel, not to go after people personally. I'm not going to do that. And so he had a lot of legal troubles that a lot of people are having a hard time getting past, but they decided to go with him. You had Michael Keaton back, which they heavily marketed that, which did get a lot of people excited, especially people my age that grew up with Michael Keaton as Batman. And, there was a little bit of buzz behind this, but because this was supposed to be the thing that erased the Snyderverse, you announced that Henry Cavill's gone after you announced that he's back. It was whiplash. I have never seen a studio make such a horrible decision with the general public to do what they did with these announcements. Like, it was crazy what they did. How they even thought that this was going to get people excited and bring them in is beyond me. Now, you're going to have a lot of people say the Snyderverse is dead, move on, those movies were a failure. They simply were not. What's a failure is what is happening now. And I guarantee you, Superman Legacy is not the movie everyone thinks it's going to be. They think that this is going to be the return to DC at its finest. Now, I could be completely wrong. I admit that. It hasn't come out yet. But do I see them doing anything on the level that they had done for the first 5 films with the DCU and also with Black Adam? No. I don't see those movies coming anywhere close to what they've done because, number one, they don't have the budgets. The budgets are going to be minuscule, so they're not going to be able to do a lot of what they want to do and make it look good. We're going to get this flash CGI garbage stuff. We're going to get what are generic superhero films. Now, James Gunn's saying he wants to make these unique. If you make them so unique that it doesn't resonate with audiences, that's not going to be good either. I don't see this turning out well. I just don't. I've seen enough of Gunn's DC stuff to know that I don't want a part of it. I don't want any part of it. And there are a lot of people like me that feel that same way. But I also have a question for everybody that's out there. I have so many people come in and say, you're not a real DC fan. And I make fun of that. I just put up a review of the new McFarlane Superman figure from, The Man of Tomorrow, which I love that figure a lot. It's not perfect, but I really love that figure. And I actually did a review on that. So you can go see that through my DC merchandise review playlist. But you'll get a lot of people coming in saying you're not a real DC fan. Where are the real DC fans for Black Adam? Where are the real DC fans for Shazam 2? They're the ones that claim that they're the real DC fans. Why are you not showing up to these movies? Why is it Snyder's fault? Why is it the Snyder's fans' fault? And it's not the Snyder fans. It's not just Snyder fans. It's the DCEU fans. There's a lot of us. The general audience was a part of that. They did not jump ship after Batman vs. Superman. That is a flat-out lie because the subsequent films made a crap ton of money. That movie did not tarnish the brand. What tarnished the brand were the studios and the studios' decisions to move away from their original plan and continue to do that to this day. You tease that things are coming back. You get people excited. Black Adam makes $400 million without even getting a China release. And then you announce everything is changing again, and there's no interest in the brand anymore. You have alienated the fans. And this is going to continue to be a disaster for Warner Brothers Discovery until they realize the mistakes that they've made and they fix them. This is not rocket science. It doesn't take some executive who's been in the industry for 30 years to figure out what is going on. There are those of us that are true DC fans that understand and have a bead on what is happening with the public. And I can tell you right now that announcement with Henry Cavill not coming back was a massive failure by the studio. It was the dumbest thing they could have done, and it was dumb for James Gunn to announce his reboot. There shouldn't have been anything announced if you wanted these movies to do well until after all of that was done. I just do not understand the decisions that these studios are making. It's like they're doing it on purpose. So if you have anybody that ever comes in and says the DCEU was a failure, you can show them this video. That is a lie. It is a fact that people came to these movies up until Justice League when they changed everything, and then all the interest started to wane until Black Adam came out, which was the one bright spot, and then James Gunn made his announcement, and it tanked after that. You cannot deny the facts that more people were seeing these movies back then. People will come in and say the Batman did great. That's not a DCEU film. And not only that, it only made $700 million. Why did that not make $1 billion? If we're talking about $1 billion being the litmus test here, why did that not make $1 billion? It got a worldwide release as well. There's just so much animosity and so much of, I have this to prove this, going around out there. People aren't looking at the real facts. The facts are more people went to the DCEU films up until Justice League. It's a fact. And then they started to come back with Black Adam. It's a fact. And then you announce the reboot, and nobody's interested anymore. Look at what The Flash has done. It's an epic failure. All right, I will have another basic DC update either later today or tomorrow, so you guys can look for that. I do appreciate the support. If you like the video, please hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we will see you on the next video.